Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome back to Facebook Live, Eating the Elephant, where twice each week we talk about Hurricane Michael recovery. We talk about taking this elephant that is hurricane recovery and breaking it into bite-sized pieces for you. We talk about insurance issues and general recovery. And this morning we were finally able to get our last episode out. It's all about appraisal. So if you have questions about appraisal, then look at the episode that we posted this morning, and it'll be in order on our page as normal. We're going to take a little departure today. The first thing I want to talk about is real estate. I realize we talk about your home and your property a lot, but I want to ask a question to start this. And the last time somebody walked up to your house with a clipboard in hand, how did it go? It's kind of a hypothetical question, I'll grant you. But the experience for most of us was someone walking up to your house wanting to do work for you, probably putting an AOB before you to sign, and the results for most of us were just not really good. So the next time somebody walks up to your property with, particularly if you still have damage, with a clipboard, may be one of these people that wants to buy your home now in the current condition. And we've had several people that have called or emailed in some distress and asking for advice and asking for some insight about how the process would work with insurance and things such as that. And I have to tell you, people with clipboards now make me really nervous because the people that generally speaking are walking up and wanting to buy damaged homes that are from outside of town, most of them that we've been able to kind of be in touch with and sort of see what's going on, most of them are profiteers. I'm sorry to say that. I'm sure there are some that are very worthy investors that come in knowing what they're doing. But part of the issue that we have is they don't have any investment. They have no skin in the game in Bay County. It's just a way for them to make some money. And what we're seeing almost universally is lowball offers. People in some distress, in a home, very frustrated with the process, in some cases desperate to get out of town because they're so upset, and they're taking pennies on the dollar. And I would say that's obviously not what you want to do. It's your home. You can do with it as you please, of course. But my advice and our advice after seeing so many things going is the buy now people are not where you want to be. Just as we saw people with yard signs out everywhere, maybe sometimes not doing the best job, the people that are sticking yard signs out saying, hey, I'll buy your house now in any condition, that's probably not your best move. My advice, normally I tell you to find help, and I think you need two very specific people to help you right now. One is a realtor. You may be comfortable selling property on your own. I've done that in the past myself. Right now is not that time. The market is far too unstable. Nobody really knows what things are worth. It's very difficult to do valid research on your own. So you need someone not only that is a licensed realtor, but someone that is a local, someone that's been here a while, somebody who knows its market and knows the various areas of town, and not only what it looks like now, what it should look like in a non-catastrophe situation, but also someone that can reasonably anticipate what it may look like 6 months from now, 18 months from now, 36 months from now. I realize those are a heavy lift, but someone that's not from this area is not going to have any idea how to even hazard a guess at those things. The second person that you need to engage, everyone knows from anything you've seen of me, I'm not the greatest. I have not spoken with great affection of attorneys, because most attorneys that I've seen are guys that are, of course, after insurance companies, and they're coming and shooting arrows my direction. But what I would say is you also need to find a very, very good real estate attorney. Again, find someone local, someone preferably that specializes in real estate law. And the reason is because if you do decide to sell your home, or if you decide to buy a home in this condition, in this marketplace and in these settings, what you really need to do is you need to be really sure that contract is written effectively. It is written properly so that whoever buys your home can't come back on you, can't say they didn't know something, and can't, in some cases, sue your insurance company if you don't want them to do that. You don't want them to be able to come back and recover something from you or from your insurance company that's rightfully yours. So again, this isn't directly an insurance issue, but we have heard a number of problems and a number of complaints. And I think if you will engage those two people, and I realize that involves spending money. Realtors obviously charge a fee, and attorneys don't come cheap. What I am telling you is I think that is absolutely 100% worth the money. If you made a $20,000 or $30,000 mistake in valuing your house, that is certainly a much greater penalty to you than having to spend, say $1,000 or $1,500 on an attorney and to pay a realtor out of the proceeds of your sale. So be careful, do what you need to do. But again, I think in an unstable market such as this one, call on help. Along those lines, back to sort of my business, there's been sort of a shakeout in the local provider community, the local insurance agents, local insurance providers. There's been a lot of instability, and there's been some shakeup. And I don't think that's what you want. You don't want instability as part of your insurance transaction. We've all had enough shakeup and enough uncertainty in our lives, and this is something that you need to be able to keep settled. I don't think you want a lot of excitement out of your insurance provider, but we've been told that there have been several that have changed up a lot of their insurance carrier relationships, maybe lost some of those, maybe have had some difficulty that they can't seem to come back from. And I'm not talking about people that have had to change locations because of damage. I think that's certainly normal for all of us. But I think you should check in with your insurance provider, and I would suggest that you do two things. I've suggested this before for different reasons, but this is another good reason to check in with them. The first thing you need to do is call and meet with them to talk about your coverage. If your coverage didn't apply exactly as you thought it would, or maybe you were one of the fortunate few that had very little or no damage to your home, now's the time to sit down with your agent, and you need to discuss in detail, at length, the kind of coverage you have, and make sure that what you expect matches what you actually have. So that doesn't mean call the receptionist and go over when the bill is due. That means to call the licensed agent or the owner of that agency and tell them that you want to sit down in person with a copy of your policy and review the important provisions of it. I would encourage you very strongly to go in with a script. I would say take out a notebook, make some notes, write down at least 10 questions that you have that you want to discuss and get very specific answers to. And if that person can't give you very specific and very clear answers, that's what we call a red flag. The second part of this that we've kind of looked back at within the last month or so is you need to invite them to your house. And I don't mean by that, I don't mean you need to invite me over for a glass of wine or a burger, but you need to invite me over to your house or invite your agent over to your house to do their job. And by that I mean this. I can only insure you based upon the information I have. And if I have to rely on what you tell me, you may not realize that something that you don't think is important at all might be terribly important to me as your agent and as your insurance provider. So I think it is extremely enlightening for an agent to be able to see your property, to be able to walk through your home and around your home with you, to discuss with you the issues that you might have. I might not realize that you have a dog and that you need to have animal liability on your policy. I might not realize that you have a $30,000 fence because you have a very, very big piece of property. A pool cage. There could be any number of things that I might not realize, and we do everything we can do to ask all of the right questions, but I think it's unrealistic to assume that every agent, every time, can remember to ask every single question. So if you can bring that agent or their representative over to your house, and you can have them look at what concerns you, the things that are important to you, the things that you want to be insured properly, I think you'll have a much, much better result if we have another storm or anything else. If you have a kitchen fire next summer, it's still going to be a much, much better experience for you because you'll know much, much more about what you're doing, and you will have been assured eyeball to eyeball with your agent that things are covered the way that they're supposed to be. And if it turns out that they're not, then that agent is going to bear the responsibility of that mistake. And so what you want to do as best you can is put this on their shoulders. The best way to do that is to have them to your house to see what it is that they're insuring and what they're not insuring. You can discuss what's important to you and what's important to them from an underwriting point of view. So very, very important, I think. Invite your agent over. We've come back to some questions also about contents, and we've covered some of this before, but I thought it would be good to do a quick little review. My first bit of advice with your contents is to do it on the computer. I much prefer Microsoft Excel because I love Excel, but doing a handwritten list, while it's certainly acceptable, you're going to have trouble. You're not going to be able to add up columns necessarily. You're going to have to change things and erase them or scratch them out, things like that. You can't sort them. When I put everything into Excel, I could add up columns and see what costs were by room. If I changed something on one particular item or added something, it would automatically total it again for me. So I could keep that and I could reprint it, I could email it. Made it very simple for me. But however you keep your list and however you submit it to your insurance company, there's a process that I would recommend you go through, even if you've already prepared your contents list. And this will assure that you don't rip yourself off. Because I will tell you, in contents claims, a client, a homeowner, is far more likely to leave money on the table to short themselves than the insurance company will be to do it to you. You'll just forget things, and it's really, really hard. It can be very intimidating, and a lot of us are already mentally sort of overwhelmed with all that's going on. So what I would suggest you do is take one room at a time. Don't do this all at once, but do what I would call a virtual walkthrough. The best way to do this is in tandem. It's a team. It could be like a husband and wife, or you could bring anyone you trust that's very familiar with your home. And what I would suggest you do is, if you can stand, if your home is safe enough, and maybe you've got your drywall back up and things such as that, go into that actual space. If you can't, it's okay. Then you can stay wherever you are. Close your eyes and do a virtual walkthrough of a particular room in your house. Look up at the walls, see what's on the walls, see what the furniture is, and then what's very, very important as part of this process is to move things around in your mind. Open drawers, open cabinets. A tremendous amount of value is behind your cabinet doors and in the drawers in your kitchen, in your bedroom, in your living room, and in your closet. The walkthrough of your closet is going to be very, very important. So there's a lot of things you can tuck away. I cleaned out my closet this past weekend, kind of a spring cleaning to take clothes to donate, and there was stuff tucked everywhere. So you may not replace those things, but they have value, and you are entitled to recover money from your insurance company for those items. You can recover the actual cash value if you don't replace that item. Again, what I would suggest you do is do it in a team and do one room at a time. If you try to do your whole house all at one time, you're going to just make yourself nuts. So do this over a period of time, and if you've already submitted your contents list, you can still make use of this process, because you can go through, and as you're talking through this process to the person that is making notes, if you're doing the virtual walkthrough, you want somebody writing down what you're saying as you're naming things and opening drawers and seeing what's in those drawers. Sit down, compile sort of what you have. You don't have to formalize it, but sort of compare it to what you've turned in. And I think what you might find if you do this process is you might come up with a pretty significant amount of money, some additional value that you can submit as a supplemental claim. You're entitled to that money, and you should send that list if there's an additional list of items. Send it to your insurance company and get another check. I want to sort of begin to close down with something. I mentioned, I posted on Facebook sort of a theoretical question of everyone. It was hypothetical, I'm sorry, about where they thought premiums were in the state of Florida. And I noted in my post that I had the top 20 highest premium states for homeowners insurance. And I had asked the question where everybody thought Florida fell. Well, of course, it was a trick question, because Florida is number one. Per dollar of value, Florida has the highest premiums in the entire United States. That doesn't come as a surprise to many of you, especially if you've moved here recently and you moved here, say, from North Georgia, and you had a large brick home up there and you moved into something smaller here, and your premium still might have gone up 40 or 50%. That wouldn't come as a surprise. Part of the reason this is because we are number 2 on the list of all states for what they call judicial hellholes. I don't want to get into where the articles are. There's Americans for Tort Reform as an organization that puts this information out every year. And if you just will Google the term judicial hellholes 2018-2019, you can pull up the article and you can read where things go. But part of our problem is hurricanes, and I want to admit that. There's no question that we're more exposed to hurricanes than anywhere else. But we're also more exposed to bad players in the tort area. So you got more attorneys, more of them misbehaving, and more people trying to get in your pocket for things. And a lot of times when someone's after you, what they ultimately do is end up getting it out of the pocket of your insurance company. While that's the way it's supposed to work, it does tend to drive up premiums for all of us. So there is a direct correlation between attorney behavior and our premiums. So keep that in mind. I'm not sure that there's a lot we can do about it right now, but we've just made a few legislative changes that I think certainly were going to help with regard to AOB. I think we're going to see a lot fewer people ripped off after the next storm. I'm going to let you go, and we'll come back to you next Wednesday. As a final reminder, I'd like to remind everyone, I'm the insurance guy, I've got to say things like this. Texting and driving is now a primary offense, as it should be. Don't text and drive. I know you hear it all the time. I know people say it all the time. Now it's going to cost you a little bit more money. And I think now is the time, now that it's a primary offense, it's a good time for all of us to add a little self-discipline to our driving habits and put the phone down. Again, if you have questions about appraisal, we covered that this morning. It'll be posted on our Facebook page, and we'll see you next Wednesday.